We're a couple steps back, and we're going to kind of look at the whole picture, and then next week we're going to dig into some of the signs or some of the things that our country or our world's facing that points to the prophecy of Christ. I was reading, you never read before, the More Than a Carpenter book, Josh McDowell, and I'm just about ready to finish it, and he was just talking about all the prophecy that has come true in the person of Jesus Christ and in Scripture. There's no other book in the entire world that has as much prophecy and foretellings of stuff that actually happened. Okay? There's some people, like a guy wrote a book that said, "Why the world will end in 1988." That thing kind of bombed, didn't it? Okay? And then he said, "Why?" And then he wrote another one that said, "Why the world will end in 1989, I believe."
Wasn't it like 80?
That one kind of bombed too. Okay, and so the next book he wrote was some other time it didn't sell as good, but there's no other book that's done this. So let's look at Matthew chapter 24. I'm going to kind of summarize real quick so that I can get into what we're going to get into as far as Israel is concerned. Okay, look at verse 1. 24 verse 1 says, "And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple." Verse 2, "And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say to you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." Here's the three questions. Okay, ready? It says, "And they set upon the Mount of Olives, his disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be?" What things is he talking about? The overthrowing of the temple, every stone being cast one upon another. That's what we looked at last week. Last week we looked at how in 70 A.D. Titus of Rome came in, and because they burned the temple with fire, okay, the gold that overlaid the temple sunk in the cracks of the blocks. Remember that from last week? Some of you weren't here last week, so that's what I'm doing again. It sunk in the cracks and the different things of the blocks. So when the Romans come in and siege Jerusalem in 70 A.D., for them to get all the gold out, which they wanted, they overturned every stone of the temple. And then Jesus, in verse 2, says, "Not one of these stones will be left without being overturned." It prophesied at that time. So that question, they're like, when is that going to happen? So he told them. Okay? This is when it's going to turn over. There's going to be some signs of this. Look at verse 3. He says, "Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world?" Three questions that were asked. Jesus, when he gives the rest of Matthew 24, he speaks of some of the things that's going to happen to the disciples before the destruction of the temple. But also, he talks about what's going to be some of the signs of his coming. And Matthew 24 is just chock full of signs. Notice it didn't say, "Tell us when you're coming." They said, "Give us signs." Okay? Like give me a sign, Will, when you're about to be done. And you guys know some of the signs when I'm about to be done. I go, "Whoa, the time's almost done," or something like that. I'm like, "Well, I'm wrapping it up." So if I shut my Bible, I'm almost done. That's what they're kind of asking. They're saying, "Give us some signs of when your second coming is going to be." Now, turn Matthew 24. Look at verse 32. We're going to look at this country called Israel. Look at verse 32. Look at verse 32. This is called the parable of the fig tree, okay? It says 32, it says, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is not. So likewise, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled." So watch this. What is a parable? When the scripture says, what is a parable, what is it talking about? What is a parable? Jessica? A story with a deeper meaning. Very good. One person said it's a earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Okay? It's basically the same thing. It's just got a deeper meaning than what you see on the outside. So watch. When we look at this fig tree, the fig tree has a deeper meaning than just some fig that's getting ready that has a kind of a branch, a tender branch, and starting to put forth leaves. There's a deeper meaning to that than Jesus just telling them how a tree grows, okay? There's a deeper meaning. So, to try to get you to understand what this fig tree is, I just want to break it down, okay? I'm dumb. And so I've got to break everything down. Okay? This is real simple though. Watch, okay? I got to use a whiteboard. I'm not trying to trip over something. What is the three basic nouns of this parable? Just in verse 32. What's the three basic nouns in it? The parable of the fig tree. What's one of them? What?
Tree.
It's a fig tree. Okay, so you have the fig tree. Check. What'd you say?
Leaves.
The leaves and the branch. Okay? The three basic nouns in this parable are these three things. So let's break these three things down. Okay? As far as what they are, to get a deeper meaning of what Jesus is trying to tell them is going to happen before his coming. Okay? Now, in Scripture, a fig or a fig tree is symbolic in some way of Israel. Now, I believe that when this fig tree, when they're talking about this fig tree, they are talking that this fig tree is Israel. Okay? Is the country of Israel. If you go through the New Testament, Jesus talks a lot about the fig tree and how some of it was barren, how some of it had leaves but had no fruit. He was really mad at that tree and cursed it. Okay? And so I think at this point in time, because Israel rejected the Messiah, Jesus Christ, so that Gentiles, everyone else, could be saved, kind of picturing that fig tree with leaves but no fruit, Jesus got pretty mad at him. So if we line this parable up, this fig tree being the nation of Israel, okay? And it says the branch was, what does it say, tender? You know what it says? Picture this. If I had a newborn baby, okay, rocking on, and suddenly I go, whoops, and drop the baby. Now, I wouldn't intentionally do that, but if I dropped it, everybody would be like, ah, you dropped the baby. Because the baby was tender. The baby was new. It was young, right? But if I brought Nate up here, and I was rocking Nate in my arms, right, okay? And I dropped Nate, everybody go, he fell on the ground. Because he's not as tender. He can take a little more. So when it says that this fig tree has a branch that is tender, it's speaking of the youngness of this fig tree, okay? If you see a big oak tree, these oak trees, them branches ain't tender, man. You can do whatever you want with them things. They're almost impossible to break. But a young, tender branch is young. Okay? So watch. This branch being young, and then it says there's leaves. Now, it doesn't say anything about fruit at this point. It just says it has leaves. Does anyone know what an apple tree must do before it brings forth fruit? It's easy. I'm pretty much telling you, but that's how it leaves. If you come up on a tree and in the springtime and the tree has no leaves at all, now hang on to me, okay? I know I'm skating all around this thing. We'll get down to what it means. If you see a tree that has no leaves in the springtime, that tree's dead. Okay? Before it can bring forth fruit, it's got to show evidence that it is that the leaves are coming. That's how we know the fruit's coming. So the leaves are there, but it's about to bear fruit. Okay, let's just say that. About to bear fruit. So here you got about to bear fruit. So let's look at this parable. It says Israel is young. When Israel, Jesus said, when Israel is young and tender, it's young, it's about to bear fruit, but it's not bearing fruit yet. It's got some leaves on it. It's starting to show some fruitfulness, but isn't bearing fruit for the kingdom yet. He says, when you see this stuff, this is all about to come to pass. Now look at the verses right before it. Look at the verses right before it. This is what he's talking about. Look at 27. For as lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.